Welcome everyone to another observability clinic, automation through settings 2.0, managing your monitored entity configuration, permission aware at scale. And I think that's really important today. I am not an expert in settings 2.0, especially as it comes to around automation, but Thomas and Mike are. Thomas, Mike, welcome to my clinic and thank you so much for enlightening us today.
Hello, Andy. Great to be here.
Yeah, thanks. Returning guests, both of you, I believe, right?
Yeah, definitely.
It is my first time, but I'm really glad to be here.
Then hopefully not the last time. You have it in your hands, Mike. You're both senior product managers at Dynatrace, but I really want to kick it off as fast as possible. I know you have a lot of content that you've prepared, including some live demos. Therefore, I want to pass it over to you guys. Let us know what you have prepared for us. What will people learn today? And then go right into the content.
Will do. Thanks, Andy. I'm going to kick it off. And what you are going to learn today is why the permission-aware settings are important, what you can do with it and what's already covered within, how the setting overrides work. That's how you can manage settings at scale with that. And after that, a short demo will be served by Thomas and me. And at the end, a little outlook what's coming next for settings. Okay, so one of the biggest pain points for administrative people working with Dynatrace and with settings is that you really want to give the people the control they need and they should have. So your goal is to really give them selective access to the stuff they need to do, because otherwise you need to do everything yourself as an admin team, and that's causes stress on your team, on you and your team. So you really want to hand off the control to the teams, but still you need to keep control and keep an oversight what can be done and what happened actually within the settings. So you need to be able to check what happened. Mm-hmm. The second big part is not only do you want to delegate, you want to automate. And the new settings framework allows us now that all settings share the same generic API. That means that automation can be done very consistently. Also, the setting screens are one-to-one relation, have a one-to-one relation to the actual API payload. That means it's really easy to understand what and how you can automate your settings. And finally, the best part, and that's also tying to the previous point, whatever permissions you set for your users in the UI will also affect the API. So what they can do in the UI, they can do in the API and not more. That's the important part. Mm-hmm. And then the point of scale is that with the settings framework, you can now really control. Oops, sorry.
Sorry, that was me.
Was a slide presentation mishap. It means that you can control the scale of your settings in the sense that you can pre-configure settings and not only reactively configure settings. Thomas will go a little bit better into detail what that actually means in the hands-on, but you can define the settings on a more general level and only refine as needed. Sorry, we're stuck again. There we are. Okay, and another quite important point of the new framework is that the UI is also consistent and across all the settings screen. Traditionally, there was a lot of love invested and engineering power invested in many of the screens, which happened to be very well tuned for power users, but there was quite some inconsistencies in there at sometimes. So some of the settings have changed and might change in the future, which could be something that the power user might notice, but it also has a huge benefit that you now can consistently, as you can see here in these examples, filter list-based items, have an absolutely consistent save pattern and discard pattern, and also have even the smaller details like how lists are being dragged and dropped and reordered are really consistent across the board with that. Where we are at the moment with the framework in regards to permissions, all environment-wide settings pages can be made accessible individually. So you do not no longer need the global admin privileges to enter any of these settings screens. You can now have, as an admin, delegate each of these settings individually. A few of them are aware of management zones inherently. So if you delegate a settings access for a management zone only, this means that the users who receive that can only act within the management zone, and there is no crosstalk among management zones through that. And finally, the entity level settings, that's the settings on an individual host or process group and so on, they can also be made accessible through the pattern of management zones. And a few select screens can also be made individually only per screen on an entity level as well, in addition to that. So with that, I'm going to hand over to Thomas, and he's going to into more detail what this means on.
Yeah, thanks a lot. So one of the points was the framework that Mike provided was then used by our teams to migrate and to give all these options that we now have to our users for the settings. And one quite important ones have been the process and service related settings. So for instance, when we talk about process and process settings that also contains all the container settings, we now have migrated almost all of the settings that are available here. So most of the settings are now available in the new settings 2.0 framework. We also, all new settings that are added in the meantime, like for instance, process instance snapshots or process availability, they are already implemented within the new capabilities that we have. So they come along with the built-in API, they come along with a unified look and feel that is consistent across the whole environment. How you can detect which settings are there are the 3 dots on the top right, and there you get more information, like for instance, the schema ID that you need then if you want to provide access to a specific schema to a subgroup of your users here in that case. And all these settings are then also available in the new settings endpoint here via the environment API 2.0. All of the settings we have now also implemented are documented here. And what is nice, what I like a lot is that we, as the settings can be sometimes a little bit more complex, we have also here for the settings some examples here. What would be meaningful payloads here for the API to also have a better understanding what you want to set up and how it should work. For instance, here, some settings for a JBoss server, what could be our typical use cases here in that case. As mentioned before, one key point is that we allow to have overrides for this setting. So this makes sense for specific settings, so not all settings have this different scopes here. But for some scope, and especially for the process group settings, but also for the OneAgent settings, it can make sense to have locally a different settings than globally here. And for some of the settings, we have here 3 levels of different granularity. So it can be that on environment-wide, a specific setting is activated. And this would also mean that this would be out of the box true for all the more detailed things, like for all the hosts within a host group, the setting would also be activated here in that case. But if a host group in override on host group level would be possible, it would be possible to disable a specific setting for all hosts that are within a specific host group. And so all these hosts would automatically inherit the setting from the one level above that is more specific here in that case. And then if there is a third level of level of detail here, it would still be possible then within this host group, if for a specific host you want to have a different setting for some reason, to activate it again. So it's really possible in a large scale on the one hand side to define globally what should be the typical behavior, but then tweak it based on your need on a very detailed level. So for process monitoring rules, for instance, they can be on the set on environment-wide level and also on a host group level. On a host level, this is not really, doesn't make so much sense because the process monitoring rules should basically tell the OneAgent what is monitored in a larger scale here in that case. But they can be activated and deactivated then for specific cases here in that case. Andy, do you have questions to that specific case here?
Yeah, thank you so much. First of all, just a little pun. If you would have the same thing, the same kind of inheritance rule for your PowerPoint skills, we would have more consistency of host group and host writing on the little icons here. But no, what I really like about this, and fun aside or joke aside, overall, what I love about this, and this is also what Mike said in the beginning, you are handing control to the individual teams. We talk a lot about self-service. We talk a lot about empowering teams to take care of their own configuration, but still give them kind of guidance and also making sure that they cannot change things that they shouldn't change. This is why I really like the permission settings a lot. I like the inheritance, because with this you can easily control by still giving people the chance to make changes. I think this is fantastic. I have one more question that you showed earlier. I know you're walking through process settings. I think the next is going to be service settings, but this really applies to pretty much everything now we do in Dynatrace. So we try to adopt the settings 2.0 framework for all type of configuration. Am I correct?
Exactly. So any new configuration that is built is already automatically built into the framework.
And does this also mean that certain settings that have been around for a while, kind of version 1.0, will they eventually be migrated, and in the end, at some point in the future, we will be able to configure everything through settings 2.0 and through the same APIs?
I'm going to take that. Yes and no. I mean, we are absolutely going through all the settings and evaluating them to convert them. Some of the settings might be destined to be sunset at the sooner point, then they will not be converted. Some of the settings are extremely rarely used, then they also will not, or extremely rarely automated. So we really invest the efforts to the migration to those where it has maximum effect. So yes, we are going to convert everything where it makes sense.
That's perfect. No, but thank you so much so far. I really think a lot of the people that I work with that need to bake observability configuration, monitoring configuration into the processes, this is a game changer, because you can really, as you said, enable people through self-service, through what we call shifting left, embedding configuration as part of the DevOps process into their pipelines, and give them a lot of flexibility, and it scales. I think that's the big point here. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah. This was also what we got on feedback from first users that use it. It's really working great in large environments. Yeah, as Andy mentioned already, we will also give an overview about the service-related settings. So here the picture is a little bit more complex, let's say it in that way, because we also have quite a big amount of different server-side service monitoring settings. And also here, the biggest part is already converted. Some of them are still open, but most of them will be migrated here from that point of view. A little bit specific have been this generic deep monitoring, because when we revised that, we found out this was a little bit the catch-all thing that was too less specific to be in the main menu. But we also found out that there are some settings within that fit a little bit better to different places of our settings menu. For instance, all the mainframe settings that have been within that beforehand are now in their own section called mainframe. Also, the OneAgent features that we then will later cover a little bit more deeper here fit better to this generic preferences than in the server-side service monitoring, because you can set up here much more things than just service-related topics here. And also, they are now next to the OneAgent updates, so you can make sure, okay, at first I make sure I have the latest version of OneAgent there, and then you can activate them from a workflow perspective here. Also, the service detection, this is a new section that is now in the global menu here. This was already available beforehand, but just for API. And now, through the new capabilities of this settings framework, we now have also a UI for that and an API that works in the same way here. So there is a new entry where you can define how your services should be detected, in which way, in declarative way. And this is available. This was just migrated quite recently with cluster 251. What Mike mentioned before, Also, some of the settings are deprecated. For instance, the service detection is much more mighty than the old merged service monitoring, because the merged service monitoring was very manual, where you could manually define that services should fit together. This is basically now deprecated, as it's fully replaced by the service detection that can cover all of these use cases at the larger scale. At just one time at definition, okay, please merge all services, my JBoss web services, for instance, all pods together. You can just define this rule, and you do not need to click all the time there to merge them. Also, the all anomaly detection settings, and here also the service-related ones, are now migrated to the new settings framework here. And all of these settings have basically an environment-wide scope. What we also go there, we have specific settings that have a service scope, that are just work on a single service, basically. And also there we have most of the settings already migrated. Very important one is the failure detection. So it's now possible on the one hand side to define how should failures be detected for specific services, but it's also possible, it's also, I think, something quite new on a global level if you want to define it broader. So that, I think, is quite nice what we have here. Besides that, also the anomaly detection is there. And what was quite new, it was already introduced earlier this year, is that it's now possible to define key requests via API and the UI, and to mute requests, for instance, a very request that would distract you from the key monitoring things here via the settings 2.0 framework. So it's now possible to do this via API when you set it up.
I think this is huge, especially for a lot of people that I work with that are trying to automate the definition of service level objectives on individual services and also on individual key requests. So first of all, that you can configure the failure detection on an environment and service scope is important, because while we all assume that failure detection is typically done based on the, let's say, well-known HTTP response codes, certain applications and services have a different way of implementing them, and therefore you need to configure them on a service scope. And then also being able to define key requests through the API is another great game changer to automate the whole SLOs on individual endpoints. That's great. It's really, really great.
Yeah. So quite a lot of work was here done already by the teams, and it's a big progress here. And with all of this, as we have now this all unified, we now have, for lots of these functionalities where we beforehand had just an UI, we now also have an API that is understandable and working, like for failure detection, key requests, and all of this, which was not possible beforehand. For some things that I mentioned before, like the service detection, we now have also an UI that is also usable and better explainable for users. The same is true now for the failure detection here. So there's really lots of additional improvements here. Also, the API detection rules now have an API that is there. Yeah. So this is really, quite a big change that was here step by step implemented over the last, I think, 1.5 years that we're working now since then. A very specific new point are the OneAgent features that we want to cover then later on, because this, I think, is a good example how developers can activate or deactivate specific features by themselves then. And that's basically where I want to jump over now a little bit deeper in the OneAgent feature configuration, because here we thought a little bit more how this should work and how we can improve this great functionality in Dynatrace. So we had here quite a few improvements that have been adopted with the switch to settings 2.0. It's already since quite some time in the product, but I want to elaborate it here a little bit more. So basically, since Dynatrace cluster 242, the OneAgent feature settings are now migrated and switched over from the old deep monitoring to a dedicated entry point here. The great improvements that we have now is we have one list. It can be long with all the features that are built into the OneAgent, and they can be easily configured and activated for the environment. Typically, when new environments are created, this would mean a new customer is signing up, or a new is signing up and creating a new monitoring environment. A big bunch of OneAgent features are activated out of the box already for it to give the deepest monitoring that that is available here. But as OneAgent is continuously improved here and new features are added almost every sprint here, all of these features are then available for customers with each OneAgent update. Nevertheless, we don't want to unexpectedly surprise our customers that suddenly, for instance, we support a new database connector. Suddenly they see new databases in their environment without being prepared. We allow our customers that are monitoring their environment already that they consciously activate these new OneAgent features here. So that's something if you're a customer since quite some time, take a look to the OneAgent feature settings. We now highlight also the features that would by now be activated for new users, that you can quickly go through them, take a closer look. Would this be interesting for our environment? And you can easily activate it. And with the new capabilities that we can grant permissions on smaller scopes, for instance, for specific process groups or for specific single processes, it's easier to activate it. So for instance, a domain expert can now activate new OneAgent features for his Java processes he's in charge of without needing to ask his environment admin. And the environments that we monitor can be huge with 10,000 of hosts and 100,000 of processes. So it's really great that now everyone can activate it if he has the right permissions here in an environment. Yeah. That's basically what have been here great improvements. Andy, do you have anything to ask about this improvements here?
I just want to confirm, because I think there's a lot of great use cases that this enables. You mentioned like when our customers are pushing new features of their applications that they're monitoring through different environments, they go from dev to staging and to production, and then they are, kind of monitoring it and validating it and then kind of pushing it forward. Observability is basically a capability of the software that you're pushing through. So that's why it's the same. The same should hold true what you do to your software also with your monitoring and with your monitoring settings. So now what I see, if new features come out, you can selectively also through automation enable it in a lower level environment and then push these changes through all the way into production, which is really great. And not just turn something on in production you've never seen this before, and then all of a sudden you're surprised. Like you mentioned, you see a new database connection show up.
Yeah.
So I think that's a great thing. And the second one I really like as well, where you say you may want to explore new features, but you don't want to turn it on globally. You want to first figure it out on this new demo app, on this new sandbox project, play around with it in your limited scope, and then say, if you are the architect and say, now I want to turn it on for everyone, then I would like to promote this change as quickly as possible. And I don't want to steal all the thunder, but I think this is something that you will also probably demo.
Exactly. Yeah, so basically just one new thing here that I want to go through that here in the slide still. The OneAgent features are now in the preference sections right below of the OneAgent update. So this is basically typically fitting together quite closely. They are fully supported by the Settings 2.0 framework here. So you have now all these details here that you will also see later in the demo, like the schema info, but also something like revision history and an overview about the overrides and hierarchy. And this new functionality that I teased beforehand, you get the quick by clicking on the new OneAgent features on top of it. You get the list which OneAgent features would be now activated for new environments, but are still deactivated for your environments. So you can quickly go through them, get an overview. Oh, there is something new for PHP, or there is something new for Java Apache HTTP client. You can then easily, just by clicking on it, go to the entry point and activate this feature here. And what is also, it's just a minor improvement here, but what is quite convenient, it's easy to share a link to a specific set of features, like here, for instance, for all of our log features with someone else. Just copy the URL on top of it and send it over there. They will see exactly the same based on the filter criteria they have in there. So that's quite a small improvements, but it's quite mighty and quite useful here.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I hear that you like the word mighty. You've been using the word mighty quite a bit, but you're right. It's very powerful what you're doing.
Yeah. So let's go over and take a look how this looks like in a real environment. So for instance, think about new capabilities that we have added, like here, for instance, the automatic connections of logs and traces that is a feature that is built into OneAgent since quite some time right now. And I have here an environment where I'm a limited user. I have just the rights for specific Java process and microservices to keep an eye on them. And also within this, my premise, within a limited management zone, I can make environment changes and config changes by myself. So let's take over a look to my dashboard here that gives me a quick overview about the health of my system, some basic stats like Java health metrics, garbage collection states, and so on. And I have on the one hand side a very limited set of settings where I can do changes here. So within my management zone, my limited management zone, I can set up specific settings. Like, for instance, I can define SLOs within this management zone, but I could also set up specific alerting profiles, but just within my management zone with limited access. I also named it in the same way. What you can also see here is this unique look and feel. So all new settings screens will have now the save and discard button in the bottom. So this is also quite nice beforehand. Yeah, through the great innovative way that we've tied them to a specific use case, they looked a little bit different always, and this made it hard beforehand.
I can attest to this, that this is the feedback that I've also received from people, that where you always had the game, where is the save button next?
Yeah. This was the history a little bit, that settings gets added since the beginning here.
Yeah. But what I wanna say here, what I think is nice, and I have not seen this in action since I see your demo now. You are only seeing those settings that you really have access to. I think this is great, because the settings screen can be quite overwhelming for a super user that has all the settings. In this case, you are, as you said, you run in your limited scope environment where your admin gave you the freedom to make configuration changes. But that means also your view on the settings stays limited to what you can actually do, and you not get overwhelmed with things you cannot change.
Yeah, that's very helpful here. And yeah, I do not need to care about specific things, so I cannot see them. But let's go back, because I want to activate now for some specific processes that I'm monitoring some new OneAgent features here. And in that case, they're not in this list because they're not in management zone wide, but I want to activate them here for a specific process here, especially for the processes where I have some metrics here on my dashboard. And that's quite convenient, because
we said this earlier. I think you need a new machine, or we need to take the CPU from Zoom, because we're recording with Zoom, and Zoom is always taking quite some CPU.
Yeah, it's really going, the vent is going quite loud here in my room. So when you hover over it for this process, for instance, that hosts my ad service, I go to the process and see now on the one hand side all the stats for process, but I can also access directly from here the settings. So here I see my ad service, I see the basic health of it, but as I have the permission to change settings for it, I can quickly go here to the settings dialog and get an overview about all the setting schemes where I have the permission to do changes. And here I see my OneAgent features also in this list. And here in that case, they will just be applied to the process group for my ad service. But this would also mean if there is a new instance tied up for the ad service, it gets automatically these settings. And here I now add an override. So I basically want to add here some specific new functionality. And I want to activate here the Java trace span context enrichment for logs. So basically select it, activate the feature, and I get also some additional information. For instance, I see here some description about this feature. I get more insights on the technology. And what is key here in that case, I also get here, I see here if the activation of these features requires a restart. And here in that case, it needs a restart. So that would mean, yeah, when a new instance of this process group is tied up, it would have this automatically on. But for the existing processes, they need to be restarted. So I can either restart them. Here I'm in Kubernetes, so I can basically then just get dispose of them, and Kubernetes scales them up new, and then they have this feature activated. Yeah, with that, basically, I'm saving my changes here. And on the next restart, my logs will be automatically get the additional information for which trace context they have been created. And with that, I want to hand over to the admin, the global admin in my environment, to Mike, to show us how this would look like from his perspective. Mike, I found here a great new functionality from Dynatrace OneAgent. I think it's worth to activate it for the whole environment here. Perhaps you can take a closer look to that.
Thanks, Thomas. I'm going to do that, and I'm now going to take the role of an admin who has more privileges than Thomas. So Thomas has sent me the link to the process group he was working on, and I'm just seeing the monitoring view of that. And I'm going to the settings, and I'm just going to check out what Thomas set up there. So I'm checking out the OneAgent features, and I get to show off some of the nicer parts of the settings screens now. So that's the screen as Thomas has set it up. And what I can do now is go here to the revision history. And that's also a new part that comes with the settings. We tried this a few times, so that's the list is a bit longer. But the interesting part is that you can now really actually exactly see when and who did what. So only on this screen, so this is really restricted to this only screen. There's always also still the audit log, of course, which shows everything across the board. But this is really pinpointed to this individual screen, and it allows me to check out that, yes, hey, Thomas set up the Java trace and span context, and he set it to on, and that's the feature. So if I now go back to this screen of the process group itself, the really keen observers might have noticed this box up here. And what Thomas did not have in his screen is that this link was not active, because he simply is not allowed to go to the screen on the whole environment. But I, here in the role of a global admin, I can do that, and I can just click this link. And I'm now moving to the global configuration screen of the whole environment. So here are all the settings, and I'm navigating to the exactly same type of setting for the whole environment. And since Thomas was so happy with the setting on his environment in his process group, I'm just going to enable this for the whole environment because it's a great feature. Let me just look for it, Java log. So here's the context enrichment. Let me just expand that and enable it. Okay, I'm saving it now. And that's it. So now it is enabled for the whole environment. But if you recall, Thomas has set it on his on the process group he has authority on, and this setting is still obviously active. It is redundant now, though, so because it is essentially the same what's set up globally. So I get to show up of another neat feature, and that's the hierarchy and overrides view. So now I can go here and check out what other process groups have changed settings or overridden settings that are explicitly set on this process group. It might be the same content-wise, but it is set explicitly. And if it's set explicitly, it will no longer follow the global setting. So I'm going to the hipster shop now again. And here I'm just going to remove this individual setting and going to save it. And if you check this box here now, it's no longer defined. So it's using the defaults that are set on an environment. And if I go back here again, it's just the same screen I've shown you before, but the override is gone if I would open it. But now let me just show yet another part of this overflow menu. This, by the way, is only because it's a test environment, so you will not get to see that, but this is internal. But the API part, this is pretty neat because the API is already there for a while, but since very recently, there is now a shortcut to explain this API and a helper page which allows you to just quickly copy and paste the API features.
That's awesome.
This is the global action, so for all the settings on the screen, so all the items. But what I want to do now is just show the Java log enrichment, and we've got the same thing here. So here's the API again, and I, as an admin, now might be allowed or should manage multiple environments. And if I now want to set this in an automated way in a different environment, I just can grab this snippet, plug in my access token here, and just run it through whatever automation I need to do. Of course, you might have different ones, but these are also partial examples to just understand the reuse, because the full schema is in there. So it's really the payload that is the interesting part, what you can reuse and use to understand.
That's super helpful, because so many people ask me when it comes to automating Dynatrace configuration, you know, where do I get the call from, and how do I know what parameters I need to put on? And you just show it to me directly from the UI. That's great. Yeah.
Yes, and it is not as explicit on this screen, but if there is a text in there in the individual controls, it will be in there. So you can really once you understand how the payload should look like, and of course adapt it for other kinds of automations of the same setting for your needs. So that's this part of the demo. Andy, any questions to the demo part?
Yeah, I just want to recap. So basically, Thomas read his own blog post. In this case, this doesn't happen often, that you read your own blog post and you like a feature and then you turn it on. But the idea is you see a new capability, you try it out, and then you have control over the environment that you're given, or the part of the environment. And then an admin can say, okay, I'm now enabling these features on an environment scale. You then showed me that you see the hierarchical information about where is it turned on and where is it turned off, maybe, where you have overrides. I think they're called overrides. That's great. You also showed me how you can start in the UI, but then get the curl request, which you can then easily use to start your automation process. I think that's great. And what else? Yeah, I wanted to have one more question to the revision history, because I think that's actually a really good point. Are there any plans? Is there any option where I can say I want to revert the change? Because maybe I wasn't happy with what Thomas did.
Yes, there is. In fact, there is a change planned to do that, to allow you to just pick one of the an older state and just apply it to the current screen. Essentially, that's the plan.
Cool. It's really awesome. This will make me happy, and many of the people that I work with happy, and hopefully also the people that watch this very happy what you delivered here.
Okay. So let me just jump back to the presentation here, and I also, in regard to the automation topics, would like to add the two items of Monaco and Terraform. These are two different ways how we approach configuration as code. Monaco is planned to adopt the settings to the ROS stack in start of next year. So then all the settings in the Settings 2 API are planned to be covered and manageable through Monaco. Terraform already supports quite a few Settings 2 items, schemas, and it is community driven. So if there is any need for you for automation there, reach out to the team in GitHub and file an issue and or even prepare a pull request. They are really happy for that as well, obviously. So what I also wanted to add here before the Q&A is the outlook. As Andy said, asked about rollback. One tiny addition to the future of settings. We are going to make changes mostly to the quality of life features in the future, and also some enterprise readiness features. So there is change planned for change logs, in the sense that you can comment your change, and also smaller usability changes, obviously. So that's the short outlook into the future.
Very cool. From a Q&A perspective, I think I covered, or I kind of sneaked in most of my questions already while you were presenting. I want to highlight though, folks, if you're watching this either on YouTube or on Dynatrace University, if you have any questions, there's obviously multiple ways how you can get in touch with us around questions. You can either comment on the video, you can reach out to your Dynatrace team either through the built-in product chat, or I'm sure you find a way how to reach Thomas or Michael or me. We're all also active on the community. Thomas and Mike are obviously on the product side. That means they are the best to give feedback on what you expect and what you would like to have, I guess, from a kind of future roadmap perspective as well. And yeah, leverage all the channels. That's what I wanted to say, that you have towards the Dynatrace community to ask your questions. For me, as I said, and I know I repeat myself, the big topic for me is automation. The big topic for me is treating monitoring configuration, or in general observability configuration, as code. And what you are doing here with the Settings 2.0 framework and with the API, you make this easier because you streamline it, you make it consistent, and therefore allow an enterprise-wide, team-wide, environment-wide, or service-wide, that people can manage their configuration. And through the API, you can also bake it into your DevOps pipeline to roll it out automatically as you're pushing your code, and therefore also the Dynatrace configuration from environment to environment. That's really all I have. It was really nice. I think you have one more slide on some additional links.
I do.
Yeah. So I think what we will do, folks, if you don't want to type this off, if you're on YouTube, then you will find the links written down in the notes. If you are on Dynatrace University, then you can also download the slides. There's a resource tab, download the slides, and you will get the links then in the slide deck. Yeah, with that, folks, is there anything else from your side? Kind of like final comments? Are we good?
Nothing from me. Thanks for the awesome summaries. They are really very well. Very helpful, I think.
Yeah.
And thanks for having me.
Yeah. And Mike, as I said, this might be the first one and not the last. So that's important. And Thomas, same thing for you. Yeah, thanks for being here. Also highlight or looking ahead, it is end of November 2022 now. In early February in 2023, we're back in Vegas at our Perform conference. So in case you are not sure what you want to do for Valentine's Day, Vegas is the place to be, and you also learn something new. We also have hands-on training days there, Monday and Tuesday of that week, and then we have the conference with a lot of new cool announcements, but I'm pretty sure automation is a big topic. And so, yeah, if you can make it to Vegas, then join us there, or remotely. It's a hybrid conference. With this, I want to say goodbye. See you guys.
See you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.